Thank you, Senator Alice-Mary Higgins.
Thank you very much. Thank you for joining us in the House, Minister. What we've been hearing about over the last few days is clearly either a matter of the most extraordinary inefficiency or serious malpractice, and I believe that the scale and the fact that this took place in every district in Ireland seems to strongly point to the latter and to the fact that we are looking at issues of malpractice here. We are looking indeed at questions of potentially not just errors of omission, but errors in many cases of falsification of records. And I think it has to be treated in a similar way, and as my colleague has said, potentially in a criminal manner as well. In that sense, I think I was very disappointed to see when the Commissioner was had a press conference recently, was speaking on the news, I believe it was yesterday, accompanied by her deputy, that there was language again of administrative error coming through. We heard one of the deputy superintendents speaking of his administrative error in terms of who he should have informed of the audit. And it was on two levels unacceptable. One, because we're hearing the language of administrative error. We need to be very clear. A million, you cannot make a million administrative errors. And after that language of cut and paste, which we have heard previously, we need to be very clear and stop hiding behind such terms. It's not acceptable. Also, it was very concerning because you had the Commissioner taking no responsibility, accepting no culpability as the head of the force, but instead having her assistants take various culpabilities and various administrative responsibilities. And there is an aspersion being cast in some of the language put forward. We will find who did this, which again, as another colleague has said, it sends the message down as if there's a few rogue police officers there who each put in a couple of 100,000 extra. But we need to be very clear. This is a scale which is across the organisation. The responsibility sits at the top of the organisation. I'm also very concerned. I believe I understand and I take on good faith your statement that you were not aware of the scale, but in your speech you indicate that it's clear that the Commissioner or Garda management were not aware of the scale in June 2016. I would beg to differ, because in August 2015 we already knew that there had been 400,000 reports indicate under the Medical Bureau of Road Testing, 400,000 reports filed with only 200,000 mouthpieces. And that is what prompted the audit. So when we talk about scale, I think we need to be disingenuous. They may not have known the full scale, but if they know that there's a 100% error rate and that we are talking hundreds of thousands, then they know that there was a scale of problem, which I believe in itself was at that point unacceptable and potentially a resigning issue. So the scale was known to the Gardaí. Even at that point, the full scale may yet still come to unravel. As well as, I think others have spoken to the outrage for the 14,700 people incorrectly convicted, and you've addressed that. I would urge that it's not simply employment and economic damage that is looked to, because there's a considerable psychological, emotional and personal damage to people by undergoing such a process, and it can affect many aspects of life as well as employment. Minister, you mentioned a root and branch. Just in terms of, I would just say, first of all, the culture change is key. You mentioned that it's now the time for a root and branch review. I would respectfully suggest it is long past time for the root and branch review. The signals and messaging have been coming forever. You yourself mentioned, Minister, the Garda Inspectorate report with its thousands of recommendations in areas which are also of great concern, because along with the over-reporting of road incidents, I would be very concerned about the under-reporting we have been hearing in respect of areas such as racist incidents and domestic violence. There have been very serious concerns expressed in under-reporting in those areas, and those are also part of the Garda Inspectorate report. The very fact of those recommendations indicate the need for root and branch, but it is clear we cannot have a root and branch review of An Garda Siochana headed by the current management. It's simply unacceptable. It won't work. It's not, and I know that you may speak of it being independent, but there is a key concern there around transparency of records. In that regard, I would like to ask a question which was asked to you when we were previously in this House discussing the McCabe Tribunal. You were asked a very direct question, and I ask you now a very direct question. You were asked at that time by a colleague, I believe it was Senator O'Riordan, would you issue a directive to the Garda Commissioner under Section 25 of the Garda Siochana Act 2006 to secure the preservation of all Garda records and equipment relevant to that inquiry and to safeguard evidence. It was a direct, will you issue that order? You were asked, would you, and at the time, and I was a little bit shocked, I have to say, and surprised, you said you would not issue such a directive. I'm asking you now, again, in respect of this inquiry, both the independent inquiry which you are promising and any further root and branch review, will you issue that directive to the Garda Commissioner in respect of Section 25, securing the preservation of all records and equipment? I think it's, if anything, more pertinent here because this is an issue which directly relates to evidence, to the way that equipment has been used and the way that records have been monitored. I really urge you, Minister, to show seriousness. Lastly, I come to the final point. I concur with others. I believe there is a point now the Commissioner cannot have the confidence, and if we have to choose between the confidence of the public in their police force and the confidence of the Government and the Police Commissioner, I would also note, Minister, that it does not seem that the Garda Commissioner has confidence in the... I will conclude right now, that the Garda Commissioner does not herself seem to have confidence in the body politic, because she has indicated that if there was a Dáil vote, she would still not step down.